we're going to make a shift now, anticipating your needs as people who work in the training and preparation for continuing education of rabbis. And we want you to start, remember, with our 4 A's of anchor, add, apply, and away. One of the things we want to do is anchor. Where are you anchored right now in this work? Where is your institution doing the work? Next slide. My technology, she's scared of me. My next so what is one of your organization's most successful approaches to helping rabbis become better teachers? What are you doing already? And what are the greatest challenges your organization faces in helping your membership or your constituents to become effective adult educators? So we're going down to the ground now. From this broad picture, what are you already doing, and what do you need? What's hard to do? And then when we get that anchoring, we'll move on to some add and apply conversation for the rest of the afternoon. So take about 7 minutes, 5-7 minutes. Talk at your tables. Yes.
Question just for clarity. To help our rabbis become better teachers of Jewish learning, of leadership, of
Thank you.
What?
Of adults. Adult educators.
Of any kind.
Of any kind. I mean, you may be doing it very well in terms of teaching text,
Right.
but that may be what you do well. That would suggest that there are other areas that you may not be helping your rabbis, and it's not only rabbis in training, but rabbis in the field.
Right. I think that's, I mean, we've given you kind of 2 frames through the Limud this morning, and we're giving you 2 other frames this afternoon through the Limud. So one of the, it's not so much the hidden curriculum, but one of our agenda here is to really demonstrate that the way that we traditionally conceive of adult education in congregational life or in other synagogue lives is one way of looking at what adult learning can be, but it's the more typical and common way, and we're trying to get us to expand our thinking about what good adult education could be. So thank you.
But there are 2 different questions there, because one is, were you successful in helping rabbis become better, and here it's helping your membership.
We're making an assumption that most of the people in the room, not everyone, so you might want to project yourself into the institution you were part of. What did that institution do or not do to help? But we're assuming that the commitment here is to the preparation, continuing educational opportunities to become more effective in the field.
No, but I'm seeing 2 different things, because I think a huge problem is that education is seen only to be the domain of the rabbi, and it seems like in your second one there, you were talking about other people serving as educators in your organization. So I didn't know if that.
Oh, I think we meant your rabbinic membership.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of our operating assumption that this is the Alliance for Continuing Rabbinic Education, so client.
I'm just trying to think of their consciousness in educating rabbis to educate them that they aren't the only ones who own the Torah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. We have here. We have shared values, shared concerns. We are resources to one another. Plenty of things to discuss. We'll have some time at lunch. I hope you'll continue these conversations across institutions, across programs, across levels of concern. And I think it's very important that we maintain the dialogue. That's, in fact, one of the most important features of a good adult learning practice. Good education generally, but adults crave the conversation, the comparison, the opportunity to step back from their own experience and think critically about what they're doing in relation to what other people are doing, what other places are doing. We want to give you a quick review for some, a quick introduction for others, to some of the basic principles, some of the things that we've learned about studying adult learners, studying adult Jewish learners, studying adult development in the broad sense and the adult Jewish community in terms of Jewish identity. In your folder, there in the middle section, there are a couple of handouts, and I'd like you to take out the looking at adult Jewish learning through different lenses, and I invite you to take about 30 seconds to learn all of that.
Yeah.
Indeed, this material comes out of work Lisa and I have been doing for the last 15 years or so. Sorry. We didn't put this one on slides, so you have it in front of you. But in fact, we're going to go off page. This is your takeaway. One of the things you can take away and build from. On the flip side of it is a slim bibliography. There are resources out there, and if you are preparing, planning to have in-service programs, professional development programs, courses that you're teaching about becoming a more effective adult educator, we really recommend that you make sure that your learners engage issues of adult development, adult learning, Jewish identity, and adult Jewish learning. These are interrelated topics, but they don't always get interrelated, and most of our rabbis in the field, most of our Jewish educators, adult Jewish educators, don't have the grounding in all four of these. I think there's probably most grounding in the Jewish identity quadrant here in terms of Jewish identity ebbs and flows, people come in and out, the sovereign self material. Rachel, it's in the center section. One more open. There you go. Yeah. The hidden part of the folder. But I just want to review briefly some of the things that inform these lists, and these are reduced from extensive analyses of the literature, these different literatures, the literature on adult development, on adult learning, which is a vast literature, literature on contemporary Jewish identity, and the literature on adult Jewish learning. So I'd just like to say that from where I sit, based on many interviews with adult learners and with the rabbis or the educators who work with them, is that there has to really be a grounding in the notion that people are living long lives where they're changing a lot, and that change is happening very quickly. And people are saying that it's happening more quickly, whether it isn't or isn't in reality. The feeling is that it's changing. In fact, some of the best adult learning literature comes out of the immigrant literature, the education and socialization of immigrants 100 years ago, when also, for our grandparents, life was changing very quickly, and how do you adjust to a new world when you're in so much change? Well, that's how adults feel today. They're entering constantly into multiple worlds with multiple identities. They're having to adjust and adapt to change, and they often look to new learning to help them make new meaning. And it's the meaning making that's the important part of adult growth and change. If an old frame, an old way of thinking about things, that which is familiar, it suddenly goes out the window. And what is the new familiar? And people use education and educational experiences to develop the new familiar. And it's how we recognize that at any time of change, a person has questions, needs to think in new terms, and what are the circumstances that the educator can do to create an atmosphere for looking at how do I become more competent, how do I become more comfortable, how do I become feeling less alone. So those are, in times of change, those are things we need. We need a sense of being more competent, more comfortable, less alone, more empowered. I heard empowered over at one of the tables, and I think that is a lot of adult growth and change, is how do I become empowered when I am going through so many changes. So the adult development literature, and we have suggestions on the back, talk about longer lives, more changes, people wanting to reinvent themselves, to restory their lives, to have second careers, third marriages, new opportunities to do it all over again. So that's where the adult development literature is. The literature on adult learners, I just want to mention several points that stand out, which I think rabbis really need to remember. Adult learners are voluntary. Nobody's making them come. And as volunteers, they self-select whether they're going to be there, how long they're going to stay, what they'll put up with. They come from organizational experiences where they're treated to fancy professional development experiences, and then they come in and sit in the Sunday school classroom, religious school classroom, in these small chairs with pediatric art on the walls, and they get poor runoffs from the Xerox machine. It's happened to me. And I get good quality elsewhere. Melton Mini School is an example of what people will pay for. They're volunteers and they will pay for high quality learning over a long period of time, but it's the high quality. So they're volunteers, they expect high quality. They also insist on relevance. This is, if it doesn't apply to my life today, don't give me the theory, tell me how I can take it away. And that doesn't mean that they don't come back and ask the theory. In fact, one of the things about empowering adult learners is that they really want to be self-directing. They come in often saying, oh, you're the guru, tell me what. But then you mention one thing and they go home and Google it, and they come back the next week with all these examples and all these questions. That capacity for self-direction is a hallmark of adult learning. And the minute they discover that they too can join the conversation by virtue of something they themselves have done, that's the ownership that Sid was also talking about. Owning my adult learning, owning my Jewish learning experience. They, at the same time, and so these points are not necessarily in sequence, that they all intersect. A lot of adult learners need just straight information. Don't confuse me with all the theory. I need the information how to turn my iPod on and how do I get to an app. Or not my iPod, my iPhone on and how do I get to an app. Then there's transformational learning. And they're both kinds that are important to adult learners. Adults want the informational experience. They want then ways to take their own learning and position it in relation to other people, to their own assumptions. They suddenly, what did I think before and how am I needing to think now? How do I learn to think in a new way? How can I practice this new learning in a new way? How can I get reinforcement? So rabbis don't often set up an environment for this transformational learning. They'll often do informational learning, but stop short of really letting people engage the concepts and push it, and what are they going to do about it. And I think that a coaching model, I actually loved the recent New Yorker article on coaching, if you didn't see it, but that people, you go and you get coaching in the gym. We don't have to be an expert. This is one, in the sports world, it's expected that you will continue to get coached to do the play better. And this opportunity to have a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage, the person who will help you revisit what you've learned, help you set new goals for yourself, and not necessarily stay in the role of expert. Adult learners want experts, but they want people who are real people who can interact with them authentically and bring their own experience in. That kind of a combination of what Stephen Brookfield calls credibility, that they're the expert, but authenticity, that they're a real person teaching me, and that person struggles with these things as well, or has walked this path before, or is open to saying, I don't know. That's a very different model than, it's a form of simsum that many rabbis as educators don't remember that they're supposed to consider as part of the holiness of the moment, of stepping back and making the learner's growth be the most important thing. I've mentioned, that I think the Jewish identity literature is taught more, is it visited more, and I think just building on what Sid said, because of the new sub-communities, whether it's the eco-Jews or the spiritual questing groups, or I'm a choral singer, so the Jewish choral music groups, and that we're our own subset of community. The social justice groups, the GLBT subsets in subsets of congregations in the community. The foodies, the Yiddishists, there are all of these sub-communities of learners who are of adults looking for reframing their Jewish identity, often through the learning they do in those sub-environments. And these sub-communities enhance Jewish identity, and they are part of where we're going, and I think you really captured that very well. It's certainly beyond the traditional walls of organizations, and that really gets to our point about, Schwab's point about the setting, so that what goes on in living rooms, or Wuthnow's point about 12-step programs, about independent groups, about bookstore groups, book groups. These are all where people are developing Jewish identity outside our traditional walls. And finally, let me just zero in. I would say that Lisa and I were deeply influenced by our research with Steve Cohen and Meredith Wucher on the Melton Mini Schools, looking at the impact primarily on the learners over time. What was it like for these people to be in a 2-year program to do the enrichment learning, get deeper? And what we found were some of the things that are on this list. And I'll just say that Jewish adult learners just love getting an intellectual framework about where Judaism fits in and where they fit into Judaism. They want to position themselves. And that seems to have been missed for many of them. They maybe had a formal Jewish education, but they don't quite get the picture of where it fits in. And they want to understand why they do what they do. So that if you suddenly tell them Jewish values and Jewish traditions, that's why my grandmother did that. There's this light that goes on. Or they do things then with more intentionality and purpose. So I'll say, I'll light the candles, but I'll do it now. I know why I'm doing it. That's very important. It's very simple, but for a lot of people, it's the starting point. They want to become part of the Jewish conversation and feel less pediatric. That has already come up. They're well educated. They don't like feeling inauthentic in their Jewish conversation. So they're really looking for the opportunity to be a full member at the table. And we need, and often our rabbis and educators leave them at the foot instead of up at the same level. And so how do you bring people in on a more equal basis? I think also, they really want diverse perspectives. This is the pluralistic world. I don't want to hear just one view. Let me hear several different views, and then let me decide where I fit and what I believe. And it may be that I actually believe in the God that I didn't think I believed in, but don't tell me what God I'm supposed to believe in. So there's a real desire as part of critical thinking to be able to hear multiple perspectives and to learn how to study, how to get to the sources, how to get to the resources. Our work on the Melton Mini School was primarily about the learners. There is no national database at this point about learners, about adult Jewish educators. There's no national database about adult Jewish learning programs. So that from a research point of view, we're still out there trying to gather data, and you are part of that process. So what's going on? You create this collective body of information about how we are helping to develop our educators. And Sarah Tauber just did a dissertation recently about 3 adult Jewish educators, 3 rabbis. First work on that. One chapter of the Melton book is about the role of the teacher and the role of the teacher in the adult Jewish learning setting. So we don't have a big literature. You're going to contribute to that, and we really welcome your contribution to that effort.
Okay, can I have everyone's attention, please, to wrap up your conversation? I got to visit with three of the 4 tables, so I apologize I didn't get to hear any of the 4th, but I heard a lot of different things at each of the tables. I mean, they were very different conversations, really rich conversations. A lot of conversations about the learners and who's coming and who's not coming. A lot of conversations about the content. Are we teaching the right thing at the right time, in the right place, in the right way, to the right people? Kind of questions, which is what we were looking for. I didn't hear that much about question number 3. I don't know, but we began to get there, which is really what we hope by the end of the day you'll begin to be processing that question more, as though. So what we can see now is that it's a very complex landscape. And so in the back table, I mean, Levi pointed out that one thing, that not the only kind of learner that's missing here, but one of the classic learners that's missing here is the lishma learner, the learner who learns just for the sake of learning.
It's all lishma. I mean, these are people who are choosing to step up.
It is all lishma. Good. It is all lishma, and
no, they're not levels of lishma. This is all choice. Sorry. This is all choice, as we just heard earlier.
Right.
You said so nicely.
And
everyone is choosing whether or not to participate participating in Jewish life. So anybody who's choosing to walk into any of these classes is always showing.
It's making a choice. So I think you're absolutely right, Rebecca. Thank you. I think that that's a really important clarification, that these are all voluntary learners, as Diane said. You know, nobody's forcing them, and you know how they come. There are some, you know, when you think of the conventional or the classical or the traditional Lishma learner, that's the one who's coming to study text on an ongoing basis. But as we see that there's a whole range of motivations, needs, values, that the Lishma learner, I think that Levi was referring to, is definitely an insider in the community, and sees him or herself really embedded in the inside. And we're talking about a range of learners where the boundaries are very blurred. Some are inside some of the time, some are inside none of the time. So how we reconfigure our learning with these blurred boundaries is very challenging and important work for us to be considering. So the takeaway from this, I hope, is that this is a complex landscape. That most of the time rabbis teach the way they were taught and what they love to learn. And as Sid very clearly pointed out, you know, their Torah is not necessarily the Torah that our learners want to learn. So how we can get our rabbis as learners to stretch is really the challenge of the mission of ACRE, and the challenge of many of you in this room, is how we can get them to stretch beyond their comfort zone, their area of familiarity, and grow and be flexible and listen and respond and be in conversation is really the essence. Be in conversation with their learners and their potential learners is perhaps the first step that needs to take place if we can really understand and address the needs in this very complex landscape of potential. I'm just going to make one build on, because Rebecca made an important point. I mean, Sarah Tauber made an important point from her research, that the more the rabbi sees him or herself as a learner and is excited about his or her own learning, that translates into his or her teaching. And so really thinking about what we're doing to create the exact same experiences for rabbis as learners that we're asking rabbis to create for their Hasidim, whoever they happen to be. That's a model for us to think about. What are you doing to help rabbis feel okay and safe and inspired and excited about learning, including learning to become better teachers? Yeah. So we're going to break for lunch now. I think we have about 25 minutes for lunch, and then there will be part 2 of our limud. And our 2 teachers for the afternoon session are Dr. Sarah Tauber and Rabbi Jenny Friedman. If you went to the leadership session with J.J. Schachter, I recommend that you go to the engagement session with Jenny Friedman. And if you went to the experiential with Rachel Gurovitz, I recommend that you go to the session with Sarah Tauber. It's just a recommendation, but that's what I suggest you do.
Lunch is